topic of today's presentation is roots of violent extremism. First of all, we will be discussing what are the psychological reasons for the extremism. Secondly, I will define and briefly view some personal disposition to the violent extremism. I will end with a couple ideas. How can we use the understanding of it? There are various manifestations of violent extremism: religious, national, political, etc. What are the reasons for this? Is an extremist behavior inspired by a certain violent ideology? In fact, it's a common view. So, we are trying to find ways to deal with some dangerous ideologies. Unfortunately, when we cut one ideology, the another is arising. People can replace ideology from one to another, sometimes very dramatically. And ideologies can change also. Sometimes ideology is a very strange, very illogical and controversial mix of ideas. The ideology of violence is often primitive and contradictory. It's surprising how people can follow this. And what I mean, ideology is not a cause, is not a root of extremist behavior. In dealing with violent extremism, we must not put the cart before the horse. Of course, ideology can't justify, can enhance violent behavior, but the main thing that ideology does, it gives some explanations to an extremist for what he does violence. Well, what is the engine of extremism? Maybe this is a particular type of human. Maybe there are some specific personality traits. Of course, there are some hypotheses that seems obvious, but surprisingly, we did not find difference between extremists and others in such features as aggressiveness, neuroticism, or empathy. In terms of personal psychology, they are the same as the ordinary people. Actually, they are very diversity. Researchers have discovered high variety of age, nationality, income, gender, and education among the extremists. Let's ask, what a person obtains as he gets involvement in extremist movement? What is the positive thing does he get? What are the benefits of that? Affiliation, identity, high self-esteem, implementation of activity, sensation seeking, reduction of frustration, and so on. Actually, the base of extremist behavior are common needs, common motives that drive all of us. These needs are natural for humans. But it seems some people just have a specific, just have a wrong way to meet these needs. Social situations play an extremely important role here. Family, life experience, a reference group, common language, storybooks, and media suggest how to realize these needs. They give an examples and incentives, reinforcement for the behavior, and leads to the values, expectation, and certain way how to understand this world. This scheme is lead to common understanding of roots of violent extremism. So, there is no special extremist person or stable personal traits that determine the propensity to extremism. The risk of involvement in the extremist behavior is determined by simultaneous set of general attitudes or personal dispositions. Each of them is formed on base of the needs and the social situation. These personal dispositions are ways to implementation the needs. They determine the specific violent opinions and activities, and they define the search for suitable ideology. Although the personal dispositions are individual, their origin is referred to the culture. The extremist dispositions are invariant and they can manifest themselves in a set of particular attitudes. Actually, one disposition is not dangerous yet. Isolated disposition, if there are no others, doesn't define extremist activities. The synergetic effect is very important here. We have summarized various theories and observations and found 11 invariant dispositions to the violent extremism. They can be called the psychological roots of extremism. Let me briefly summarize the main points. Culture of power. This disposition leads to exaggerated exertion of strength. It's quite common thinking by categories: dominance, submission, strong, weak, leader, vassal. So, power is understood as source of status, authority, honor. The power is seen as a universal way to resolve the conflict, the preferred manner to approve own rightness. Therefore, strength and power are usual arguments in the discussion. Here, a compromise is defined as a weakness. If you have a power, there is no need to listen to the opinion of the other people. For this disposition, identification with a power person is important. Admissibility of aggression. This disposition means justification and apology of violence, as well as willingness to commit it. Often there is a background of real aggressive behavior, but this is not majority. This is typically manifested for lexes, for jokes, for ideas, for preferences of films or books. This disposition is strong in societies where the culture of violence widely spread. In short, this disposition makes it more likely to choose aggression as a way to relieve frustration. Intolerance. This disposition leads to the rejection to tolerate difference of others. Typically, it's unwillingness to respect persons from different social groups. For example, race, nationality, religion, social class, or profession. It may be inhabitants from another part of the city or fans of another football club. Actually, it can be people just having a different style of clothes. Intolerance is associated with single-valued thinking. You can see it as a denial of the possibility of any dissent. It is unwillingness to respect opinion or beliefs which contrary to one's own. Generally, it's a desire for separation from people unlike me. Conventionalism means forcing to consensus. It's a tendency to be on looking for people who violate conventional values. It's a propensity to point a finger at such people, to condemn, reject, and punish them. There is no apology for those who break down conventional social norms and values. It is hardnesses to the mind, to themselves as well as others. It's look very moral, but this leads to the priority of piety before humanism. There is no pity, there is no indulgence for violators of consensus. And it leads to always be looking for their enemy. So, the enemy is needed to protect the values from him. Actually, you must find out bad guys to feel own godliness. Social pessimism. This means to believe in the danger and degradation in the world. It is common vision of our world as unstable, unknown, unpredictable, and generally wicked. Very indicative beliefs are the eschatology, the anticipation of the future social collapse. So, a negative look on the future and expectation of social catastrophe trigger unlocked social and legal restraints and facilitate the aggressive impulses. Mysticism links to external focus of control. This implies attribution of responsibility to the external forces that are beyond of the nature and society. In this way, the disposition match the beliefs in mystical determination of the individual fate and in own special missions. It may be a belief in the mystical origin of one's nation and faith in its special destination. This is also referred to spiritual meaning, ultimate or hidden truth. They cannot be explicated, but are perceived as important for the society. Well, it's very convenient to justify violence by such ultimate meanings. Mysticism often leads to exaggerated attention to symbols having supernatural significance. For example, ancient signs, books, banners. Astrology, superstition, and faith in conspiracy theories are notable here. Destructiveness and cynicism. The disposition contains the generalized hostility, vilification of the humanity. This leads to suspicion and tendency to exploit human behavior for dirty motives. Typical, you can see it as a vulgarity and sexism. People in general are not worthy of compassion. It can be said this is a reduction of the value of human life, both opponents and own. Therefore, the life of others is easily sacrificed for the idea. Opponents are perceived as an inferior people, as a genetic rubbish to which pity should not be applied. Passion for movement. This disposition combines the needs for such activity, self-realization, and autonomy. First of all, this is a desire to sensation-seeking and risk-seeking. The important values are adventure, transformation, alteration, breaking down barriers, and protest against social norms. Often it doesn't matter against whom to rebel. It looks like go to hell for leather, forgetting adrenaline and excitement. Sometimes this is expressed as dreams of heroism and readiness to sacrifice themselves for the great idea. As you can see in extremist propaganda, it's often promised the heavy battle, the risk, even the possibility of this. People are also attracted by actions such as procession, Nazi gathering, scaffolds, so on. Normative nihilism. That means intention to ignore the laws and social norms, which seems unfair. This is a belief that one can ignore the rules in order to achieve their own goals. It's supported by the tendency to see the unused system of society and laws. Usually, this leads to the delimitation of the official norms or norm of majority and the norms of my social group. So, person intends to make a choice, which rules to comply with and which are not. Normative nihilism is accompanied by misunderstanding and mistrust for the legislative process. The usual manifestations are demonstrative violation of public norms, hostility for the police, anti-introspection. This disposition leads to rejection of all sorts of subjective manifestation, all which based on the human inner freedom. This is a strong extraversion, refers to the contempt of the observation of mental and emotional process. So, here you can see a renunciation of imagination and sensitivity. This is a focus on simple ideas, direct action, not reflection. Doubts, mental and emotional struggle are defined as unhealthy. This can be seen as a demonstrative disregards for humanism, some waves of fiction and art, for example, avant-garde, symbolism, abstractionism, and so on. Conformity. This disposition is based on seeking for affiliation, to a sense of group cohesion, and toward increasing self-esteem by referring oneself to high-status social group. Perhaps such person has a lack of internal control, and it leads to escape from freedom and personal responsibility. Being a member of the team is also important for the identity. Conformism relates to gaining gratification from group thinking and group unity, and therefore it leads to desire to protect group borders, look for the enemy, to fight it. Susceptibility to group pressure, as well as diffusion of responsibility, leads to the willingness to commit an offensive just for have a fun together. It should be noted, there is not necessary to be a member of real contact group. It may be a distant reference group. Finally, I'd like to highlight one key issue. If we understood the extremism roots, we are able to find out where the problems are and realized what exactly we need to do. For each disposition, we can determine what other ways, what other good ways are available to meet the needs. And we can discover what social situation must be changed. So applying for concept of personal disposition of extremism would be useful. We can measure the propensity to extremism. We can predict the violent extremist behavior. We can fight extremist attitudes. Here you can find more details in some of our papers. Thank you very much for your attention.